Okay, good morning. We are learning Leila Nishmas Mendel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain. We are going to be discussing those hobnailed sandals a lot today, okay? Okay, so let's see. So the Gemara, we are up to, we're in the middle of discussing why the decree is only on Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? So really, again, the whole thing, it happened on Shabbos. And where I said, okay, if it happened on Shabbos, why do we also have this decree of not wearing these nailed shoes on Yom Tov as well? And the Gemara explained that Yom Tov, there's also gatherings. So now the Gemara, we're about a few lines down. Tainus Tzibor, 4 lines down from the top of Samach Amud Beis, and the third paragraph in the article, Tainus Tzibor Ika Kinufia. So on Tainus Tzibor, when there's a public fast day, back in the day, there are more of these. We don't have them as much, thank God, but they would have, whenever there was like an issue, whenever there was like, typically a lack of rain or whatever it was, they would decree a public fast day. People would gather together in a public place, and they would daven together. So it's a huge gathering. So there too, litzer, it should be usher. In other words, you're telling me the whole framework is that whenever there's a big gathering, it's going to be forbidden. It should be forbidden on a Tainus Tzibor on a fast day as well. So Gemara says, Maisa kihav b'chinufia disura. The specific instance happened on Shabbos when there was a gathering due to also, which is a day when it's forbidden to work. Hacha kinufia deterahava, and here the gathering is on a day that work is permitted. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? The way the Chidushei Aram understands this is that is not that it's nothing to do with the fact prohibited or allowed, but it goes back to the principle we said yesterday, and that is that the prohibition is on a day where there's also a mitzvah, positive mitzvah, to have joy. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, we're supposed to have joy, and there's a gathering, and you're going to see these shoes, you're going to start getting distressed. On a fast day, you're supposed to be distressed, and therefore it's not such a big deal. That's the bottom line. Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva had a son. His name was Rabbi Chanina. Amr lo asur el biyarden uvesvina, who said that moving mechatas was asur over water, only when a person's going over the Jordan River. Okay, exactly as it transpired. Okay, let's pause to understand what he's talking about. So there is something called mechatas. Mechatas is the water that they use to sprinkle over basically the water of a paraduma. They take a red cow, they burn it, they take the ashes, they mix it with water, and they're very, very, very careful when transporting it to make sure that it's not going to come into contact with the dead, because if it does, it's very rare, this liquid, and it has like a significant usage that they need it all the time, and they would be very, very careful how they transport it. The Gemara tells us about one story where they were transporting this mechatas, this liquid, over the Jordan River, and unbeknownst to them, there was a little bit of a corpse that was stuck in the bottom of the boat, and it caused the mechatas to get ruined. Okay, so it's a big deal. So they therefore made a decree. Rav Chanina, the son of Rabbi Akiva, said that when this prohibition is limited to the Jordan and a boat over the Jordan. Okay, exactly the way it was, the story that happened. There's the story that happened was specifically not the case. The Rabbanan said, no, it's going to be usher anytime you go in any boat over any river. But he limited it in a very, very significant way. So it seems like there's a general principle, Rav Chanina ben Akiva, whenever there's a prohibition because of a story, he limits the exact parameters of that story. He's not going to take it broader than that story. Okay, so he said, even according to him, who normally is very limiting in terms of that application, this specifically the Jordan, because the Jordan is qualitatively different than other rivers. In other words, everyone knows the Jordan River has very specific, you see the Jordan River, you know it's the Jordan River. It's very, very specific. Yom Tov Shabbos, when it comes to Yom Tov Shabbos, they're basically the same thing. As the Gemara Mishnah tells us that really Shabbos and Yom Tov are identical, except for the fact that on Yom Tov you're allowed to have food preparation. So Shabbos and Yom Tov are basically the same thing, and even those who normally understand decrees to be very, very limited to the exact parameters of the story upon which the decree is based upon, that's the Jordan, that's specific to over here. Shabbos and Yom Tov are basically the same thing, and therefore everyone agrees that the decree is going to be relevant to both Shabbos and to Yom Tov. Okay, fine. Now we're going to have a whole long discussion about the type of nails. You have to keep in mind, these were very common shoes back in the day. You and I don't wear sandals all that often. Wearing sandals, if you're living in the Middle East, was about as common as it gets. So they're going to have a lot of discussion about what type of sandals are allowed, what type of sandals are not allowed. Again, not as relevant to us, but we do have to appreciate that this was an extremely relevant question. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Lo shanu ela l'chazik. That we prohibited these shoes is only when the nails are there to strengthen the sandal. sandal to like for functional purposes. Avalanai mutter, but if the nails were there just for aesthetic purposes, just for beauty, it's allowed. Okay, right? Because the it's going to be limited to the decree. The decree was when it had a lot of nails. When it has nails which are just there for beauty, right? Sometimes you have just the nails that are there just to has a design. You have this. Sometimes you have on your shoes. Or all the stitching they have on your shoes are there for strengthening. Sometimes yes, sometimes just there to make it look nice, right? So if it's there just to look nice, then it's mutter. But kamalanai, how many nails in a sandal are there to beautify? Meaning, how do we distinguish? Every time you can say this is for beauty, this is for strengthening. So the difference is the number. So meaning if they're fewer, then they're not there to strengthen. It's just there for beauty. Or Rav Yochanan Amar chamesh bezeh v'chamesh bezeh. 5 nails in one sandal, 5 nails in the other sandal. Rabbi Chanina Amar sheva bezeh v'sheva bezeh. 7 nails in this sandal, 7 nails in that sandal. More than that, it's going to be forbidden. Amalei Rav Yochanan Shemen bar Abba Asperlach. Rav Yochanan, who said 5, he said, let me explain to you how the 5 are situated. That I know, how are they situated so that we know it's there for beauty, for aesthetic purposes. Shtay mikan, shtay mikan. There are 2 on each side. So imagine this is your sandal. Okay, and so basically 2 over here, 2 over here. Okay, and then achas b'sarsi yosef, and 1 where the straps are fastened. Okay, so the straps were attached, and there's 1 extra nail that was there to actually attach the straps. Okay, Rabbi Chanina, according to Rabbi Chanina, shalosh mikan v'shalosh mikan. There are 3 on each side, and then v'achas b'sarsi yosef, and 1 there for the straps to be fastened. More than that is being there for strengthening and therefore forbidden. But if it's either 5 according to opinion number 1 or 7 according to Rabbi Chanina, then it is going to be permitted. Because that's for nai, that is for aesthetic purposes. Meisvei, they challenge Rabbi Yochanan's view from the following brisa: sandal hanota. Let's say you have a sandal which is uneven. Okay, so again, you have to keep in mind we live in a time where things are designed so perfectly and everything is exact. You buy 2 pairs of sandals from the same company, they're going to look exactly the same and everything comes out perfectly. But back in the day, they would sometimes just take a piece of wood, a piece of this, a piece of that, and so you have a sandal where it's large. The wood that the person on the bottom, it's larger it's like thicker on one side. It's thicker on one side and then thinner on the other. Not for not on purpose, not like because that's part of the style, but okay, that's the piece of wood they use. It's not like a flat piece of wood. It's like thick over here and thin over here. So in such a case, you want to balance it out so that you're not walking like all funny, right? Fine. So in such a case, sandal anota osolo sheva. Rasan says in that case you make 7 nails for it, okay, and that's allowed. And Rebbe allows 13 nails. Bishlam, fine. So again, 2 opinions in this brisa: 1 allowing 7 and 1 allowing 13. Bishlam Rabbi Chanina, who Damar Karmanasan. Rabbi Chanina was the second opinion above. He's an Amora and he said 7. Okay, that goes like the second opinion over here, Rav Nasan. We have Yochanan Damar Kaman. Rabbi Yochanan said it could not be more than 5. Who does he go like? Right? Neither this brisa only listed 2 opinions, 7 or 13. He said no, only 5. Okay, so who's the Gemara answers? He goes like with this third opinion, which is in a new brisa we're about to read. The time it says, Rabbi Naharai Amar Chamesh Mutter v'Sheva Aser. He says 5 nails are permitted, 7 nails are Aser. Okay, fine. So basically, he doesn't speak of, by the way, there's a number missing over here, right? 5 mutter, 7 usser. You'd imagine say 6. The answer is that there's never the way their sandals were created was that the strap is like somewhat in the middle. You would never have an even amount of nails. You'd always have to have an odd amount of nails. That's why he's jumping from 5 to 7. There's no such thing as a 6-nailed sandal. Okay. Atun Talmidei Rabbi Yochanan. You who are you and your friends who are students of Rabbi Yochanan, Avidu Rabbi Yochanan, you should go like Rabbi Yochanan, and you do 5. Anan Navid Ki Rabbi Chanina. I, who am not a student of Rabbi Yochanan, I go like Rabbi Chanina and allow 7 nails in each sandal. Okay, now we have a question. Bamine Rav Huna Rav Ashi Chamesh Mahu. Rav Huna asked Rav Ashi, what is the law if there are 5 nails? Amarlei Afilu Sheva Mutter. Why are you asking 5? Even if there are 7, it's mutter. Meaning he's going like Rabbi Chanina. Teishamai. What about 9? Amarlei Afilu Shmona Aser. Even if it has 8 nails, then it's going to be forbidden. Now, again, even though typically it doesn't have 8 nails, his point is once you hit 7, after 7, it's going to be aser. Okay, new set of questions. There was a shoemaker who asked Rav Ami, Tfaromi b'fnim mahu. If a person sewed the shoe onto the inside of the sandal, what's the halacha? Okay, so basically, in this case, we're no longer dealing with as we'll see, it's no longer full scale sandal. And now there's like a leather top to the thing. Okay, so he says, what's the halacha? Amarle mutter, it's allowed. I know it's allowed. I don't know why. Rav Ashi says, Dana mar my time. You don't know the reason. Once you sew a shoe onto the inside of the sandal, now it's a shoe. B'sandal goes Rabbanan, b'minala goes Rabbanan. The decree is about shoes, about sandals, and not about shoes, and that's the reason that it's only prohibited. It's not prohibited once you start putting like a full piece of leather on top. Then that is no longer a sandal; it's a shoe, and the decree is only about sandals. Okay, we have the following question: if let's say now we're going to talk about different types of nails. Okay, so the typical nail is a nail like we have. It's a sharp thing, and then on the top there's like a circle, like a round thing, like classic old school nail, right? Just a circle on the top. But let's say the top of the nail is like a tongue. So if you look on the Gemara, you see, and once again Rashi has drawn for us a picture. Basically, the top of the nail is like this, basically like a staple of sorts. It basically goes like this, right? It's like kind of like a tongue, like it looks like this. So the top of the nail has this, has basically is shaped like this, like two sharp sides over here. Okay, he says Amar le mutter. That's not the nail of a regular sandal, and therefore the decree was never about that. It's permitted. It's Barnami Amar Rav Yossi Bar Chanina Asok Min Kalbas Mutter. If it's made like a tongue, the top of the nail, it's permitted. Again, the prohibition is limited to the typical nail. Amrav Sheshes Chipo Kulam Masmoros. Let's say a person covered the entire sole of the sandal with nails. It's a lot of nails, but basically walking on the entire thing is covered in the nails. Why? Kadesh take karka ochalta, so that the ground does not ruin the sole. Mutter, that's also allowed. In other words, it's only when you have like varied nails, but if the whole thing is covered with nails, that's a unique type of thing. The reason you're doing that is you don't want your sole to get like worn away, and so they're covered the entire thing with nails. That's not part of the prohibition, and that's mutter. Yeah.
What about the other prohibitions of like threshing or something?
Yeah, you'd have to probably comes into a question of like davar shein miskavein, and you'd probably get into it would get into machlokas of Rav Shimon or Yehuda about situation. It's certainly not your intent, right? But if it's not your intent, and even though you're going to be going ahead and maybe threshing, possibly, but as long as it's not your intent and it's not inevitable it's going to happen, then at least according to Rav Shimon, it would be mutter, presumably. Okay. Fine. Mutter. Tanya Kavas to Rav Sheshes. We have a proof to Rav Sheshes from a price. Ish besandal mesumar. A person's not allowed to go out with a sandal that has these nails. Not only are you not allowed to go out into the public, you're also not allowed to go from house to house, meaning even a private domain. And even inside your own house, from one bed to another. In other words, again, I think we talked about this briefly yesterday, and that is that the prohibition, according to some, is not only outside on Shabbos, but on Shabbos these shoes are prohibited to be worn at all, because the whole concern is I'm going to see them, I'm going to be sad. It's not a carrying thing. It's a sadness thing, okay? However, the decree is not, your person is allowed to carry them. Okay, you can't wear them, but you could carry them. To cover utensil with them. Again, keep in mind, back in the day, they would use items for varied purposes. And so let's say you have this bowl that's uncovered, and you want to cover it so that bugs don't go in, you can use one of these shoes to cover it. Or the legs of your bed are falling out, so you put one of these shoes under it to straighten it out or hold it up. Okay? Rav Shimon says no. Rav Shimon says you're not even allowed to carry it. Okay, you're not going to touch it. Basically, treating it as muktzah, full-fledged muktzah. Okay, Rashu rov mas merosav. If majority of the sandal's nails fall out, and now only what's left is 4 or 5, mutter, you are allowed to wear such a shoe. Rabbi Mater ad sheva, and Rabbi says if most of them fell out and 7 are left, it's also allowed. Okay, chipo ba'armal mata. If a person covers the bottom of the sole with leather, the kavalo masmos l'mala, and then the nails are on top, mutter. Also, that's not the same thing as the shoe that we were talking about, as the sandal we were talking about. Aso kamin klabos. If each nail is made like tongs, o kamin tas, or the top of the nails are like a bar, as opposed to like a circle on top. They have just like a line on top, like the nail just looks like this. Okay, basically this part is sharp. You bang it in, and the bottom is just like a flat, just like a bar, as opposed to the regular circle. Again, that's not a normal thing. Oshi chifo kulam masmars, or the entire thing is covered with nails. That's the reason we quoted this whole brisa to support Rav Sheshes, who said if the whole thing is covered with nails, then take karka mochaltos, that the ground does not ruin the sole. Mutter, in all those cases, it is allowed. Okay, now the Gemara analyzes the brisa. Ha gufam kasha. There's a question. Amru nashru rov masmerosav. The brisa said that if majority of the nails fell out, afagav dinishtayiru beituva, if many are allowed, then it's going. First, the brisa said if most of them fell out, then it's going to be allowed. So let's say I had a sandal with 20 nails, and 11 of them fall out. If most of them fall out, it says mutter. So 9 are left, it's allowed. And then the next line, it says v'hadotani arba chamish in tzvei. Only if it has 4 or 5, it's allowed. Less than that, more than that, it's usher. Which one is it? Is it majority or is it 4 or 5? Rav Sheshes lo kasha kan she nigmemu kan she nekru. When the brisa says that many are allowed, it's when they're worn down. It's when they're worn down as opposed to pulled out. When they're worn down, you could see they're there, It's just that it doesn't mean that, so it says, let's say you had 20, and then 11 of them get worn down. So there you see you see that there were many, and now it's worn down. So that already is something which is going to be permitted. When they're pulled out, you don't know, if you're looking, you don't know that there were more nails there. It looks like it just only has 9 nails. Right? Meaning if 11 of them were pulled out, then you can't tell that it once had more. But if it's more that they're worn out, then you could say, okay, I get it. This is a shoe a sandal that had more nails, then the nails were worn out. Okay, this is therefore not the regular sandal. But if I'm pulling them out, it looks like all I had was those 9 nails that I see right now. That's when I need to bring it down to 5. But if they're worn out, then I know that there are more nails there and it'll be allowed. Fine. The Gemara asks further, Arba o chamesh mutter. The Gemara says if there are 4 or 5. 5 or 4, right? So which one is it? Hashtach Shri. If 5 is allowed, Arba mibai. Why do I have to say 4? Right? What's going on over here? Why do I have to say the second thing? Rav Chisda Arba misandal katan. 4 is for a small one, v'chamish b'sandal gadol, and 5 is for a large one. Okay, Rabbi Matir ad shiva, and Rebbe says it's allowed until 7. V'tani Rabbi Matir ad shlosha asrei. We have another brayse that says Rebbe allows up to 13. The Gemara says no tashani. The reason he allows 7 is when it's a sandal which is again like part of it's thick and part of it's thin. Then you could tell that it's already different, and therefore extra ones are needed to make it straighten it out. And so when it's straight completely, then up to 7. When it's like bent out of when it's a sandal, which part of it's thicker at one point and part of it's thinner, then he allows even more. The Gemara says, "Hashlas lahachi." Now that you're coming to distinguish between a sandal that is even and a sandal that's uneven, l'Rabbi Yochanan lami lo kasha. We had a question all the way back for Rav Yochanan, who said that 5 are allowed, and the brisa didn't match up. The brisa only had opinions that said 7 or more. So no tashani. We could say that Rav Yochanan was talking about a flat one, and that's why he allowed 5. The brisa that said 7, that is because we're talking about one that leans. Okay. Now the last thing Gemara is going to discuss about this whole discussion is about muktzah. Amra masna amri la amra of achdavai bar masna amra of masna ein halacha ki Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon. The halacha is not like Elazar Reb Shimon, who said that you are not allowed to touch it. Not allowed to move it. Who says it's muktzah? He says the halacha is not like him. The Gemara says pshita. Of course, the halacha is not like him. Yachid v'rabim halacha yerabim. Whenever you have a discussion, a debate, and you have one minority opinion and one majority opinion, who do you go like? The majority. Rebbe Elazar, the son of Reb Shimon, was the minority opinion. So of course we go like the majority opinion. So when it says Ma'adatema, I would have thought Mistabra Tamid Rav Elazar Rav Shimon Baha. The Rav Elazar Rav Shimon's argument is a very logical one. He says basically, as soon as I touch this thing, I'm going to end up putting on. If I'm handling shoes, right? If I say that I'm allowed to handle these shoes, I just can't put them on. Who's going to know how to make that distinction? If I'm allowed to handle it, I'm going to say, well, since I'm allowed to handle it, I can put it on. So Elazar Rav Shimon, who says that they're muksa, makes a lot of sense. You would understand that you can't put them on. It's a very logical explanation. Kamashmalan, nonetheless, since he's the minority, we don't, and therefore when Master came along to say, we still don't pass him like him. Rav Chia is a fascinating little statement from Rav Chia. You see the inner workings of the posek. He says, "Ilav dekarli bavlai shari isure." If they would not call me, if they would not nickname me the Babylonian who permits things, if they would not call me a mekel, then Sharina Beitzuva. I would allow a hobnail sandal that has many nails in it. But I'm afraid people are going to accuse me of being a big mekel. I don't want to be accused of being a big mekel. Okay? The kama. And how many would Rav Chia permit? B'pumbedisa amrin esrin v'arba. In Pumbedisa, they said that Rav Chia would have allowed 24 nails in each sandal. He says that's already allowed. B'sura amrin esrin v'tartin. In Surah, they would say that up to 22 in each sandal would have been allowed. Okay? But again, he's afraid that he's being accused as a mekel, and therefore he's not going to do so. Okay? Really fascinating, right? Amr of Nachman bar Yitzchak v'simanech. If you want to remember which one they said about him in each place. In Pumbedisa, again, they said 24. In Surah, they said he would have allowed 22. So how do you remember which one it is? If I'm going to test you in a minute, how are you going to know which one it is? When he came from Pumbedisa Surah, he lost 2. What that means is as follows. If you're traveling from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, Pumbedisa is further. You go from Pumbedisa to Surah, then you go to Eretz Yisrael. So when Rav Chia was traveling, as he did, he traveled from Pumbedisa, ultimately made his way to Israel. So as you travel, what happens? Nails fall out. So from Pumbedisa to Surah, he lost 2. In other words, if you want to remember which one they say less, to follow his journey. From Pumbedisa, there was more. Surah, there's less, and that's why Pumbedisa was 24. Surah is 22, and then ultimate fine. As he traveled to Israel, and that's how you'll remember which one was said in which place. Okay, the next Gemara is going to move away from these hobnailed sandals, which again, as we know, is not so relevant, but of course, a very relevant discussion for them. Let's just mention one point that we've been discussing from Michtam Eliyahu. We spoke about this ladder. If you recall already, he said, "Mitoch shelo lishma, ba lishma." A person has to go through right, we have to, although, and if Aaron was here at the shir yesterday, we spoke about from the Rambam how critical it is to do mitzvos lishma. Like if we're not doing mitzvos lishma, like it's really a problem. We really need to do mitzvos lishma, but we have a ladder. We have a ladder that allows us to go from lo lishma to lishma. And that's the function of this ladder. He points out that in a ladder, sometimes you have someone who simply can't climb a ladder. So what does such a person do? Let's say you have a person who is their legs don't work. They they're handicapped. They can't get up the ladder, but there's a fire, there's something. They have to get through the ladder. What do they do in such a case? What would a person do? All they have is a ladder. They'd scream. They'd yell and scream, and hopefully someone comes along and helps them in such a case. He says that we could use that analogy for our ladder of spiritual growth as well. We have to realize that sometimes we have the capability. Sometimes we could work on ourselves, and whatever our failing is, whatever our weak spot is, whatever our biases are, and we could climb that ladder, go from lo lishma. We could do it for non-altruistic purposes. I could do it because I want to be a good influence on my children. I want to do it for because I want to feel good, and I'm doing it for non-altruistic purposes, and I could climb. But sometimes it's really too hard. We're trying to change this one midah, and it's like we can't do it. So he says the same way that if there's someone who is trying to climb this ladder and and screams for help, ultimately, hopefully, someone has compassion and says, oh, okay, this person really needs help, and we'll help the person climb out. We have to realize when it comes to our avodas Hashem, we think it's all talui on me. It's all dependent on me. There's tefillah. I could daven, right? We daven every morning about to allow Hashem to overcome the Yetzer Hara, and we have to recognize that part of the toolbox that we have to be able to overcome evil and to overcome the evil of our own self is we could at sometimes we are handicapped, at sometimes we're unable to accomplish. At those times we could turn to Hashem. Hashem will just like we will have compassion on someone who needs to be able to get up that ladder, who can't climb it, and hopefully will help the person up. So too we could turn to Hashem, and Hashem will sometimes help us climb that ladder, even though we don't have the ability, even don't have the legs or the hands or the strength to climb it. But that's where tefillah comes in, and we could dive into Hashem and beg Hashem. I'm not really capable. Really, I should be failing in this area. I don't have the wherewithal. But tefillah is able to break that all down. Hashem is able to help us climb that ladder through tefillah alone. So again, we think about change. We think about tshuva. We think about working on ourselves, not to belittle, and to recognize how much of a tool we have in our back pocket. Then we turn to Hashem for assistance. Then Hashem is able to help us climb that ladder. And we'll talk more about that ladder and tshuva, God willing, in the days to come. Have a great day.